Hi, everybody, and welcome to Book Club live show. This month, we are talking about Lore by Alexandra Bracken, and I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves and tell you what they rated this book as part of their introduction. Starting with me, my name is Marines. My channel name is Marines, and this is not the worst book I've ever read before, so I can't exactly give it a 1 star, but it was like a 1 star in my feelings, so I'm going with like 1.5 stars.
Ooh, you're so generous. So, hi, I'm Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. You're on my channel. I gave it a 1, a solid 1. Is it the worst thing I've ever read? No, it doesn't matter. It's still in the 1 star. There's a 1 star category, and it falls within that. It's a 1 for me.
I'm Jordan from the Jordan Journals, and I actually am not going to rate this book because I didn't finish it, and I don't rate books that I didn't finish. I got about 373 pages into it, and I had to tap out. I was like, I am so done. I don't care. So
nice.
I'm Paige from Minimal Bookie, and I feel like I'm the only person that does not completely hate the read, so it's like a solid 3 for me. It's like right in the middle. Would not read again, but
Nicole says in the chat that after 373 pages, you can rate that.
I feel like actually her saying I'm not even going to rate it is more of a burn because Jordan would finish shitty books. So the fact that like Jordan can't even finish it, and that's not an insult to you. You're nicer than we are. So like the fact that you're like, no, that's like a 0.
That's a 0 star.
It's not even worthy of your time.
Yeah, I don't DNF books very often, so
no.
I almost DNF'd this one. There was a point where we flashed back to the past again at one point, and I was like, viscerally, like, I don't care that I was like, can I put this down? But I went for it. My apartment has never been this clean because I just needed to do something while I was listening to the audiobook. I cleaned my makeup brushes. Wow. I washed my hair brushes. Like, anyway, last month we had such an amazing read. We all loved it. And then we kind of
hello. Yeah, the universe was like, don't get cocky, bitches. Like,
we were a little self-congratulatory. We were like, we did it. And this is what we get. So before we dive into our feelings, I just want to know your kind of history with Alexandra Bracken. Like, have you read any of her other works?
Yeah, I have. And this was my last straw for Alexandra Bracken. Like I traditionally have not really liked her stuff. I looked back though, after I read this, I gave The Darkest Minds 2 stars and didn't continue on in the series. I gave Passenger 4, but I think that was at a time in my life that like, I didn't know what was going on. And like, I didn't know myself. You know, because I look back on that reading experience and I was like, you did not have a good time. But Passenger, I think I got the arc, and that was when like the Passenger arc hype was like, meh! So I think that did something to my brain. I don't think that was all me. And then obviously this happened. So this was my last, like, I obviously don't like her books. And then also, I'm sure we'll talk about this, the fact that like so many people seem to have liked this and we are in the minority. I'm like, maybe it's just not for me. Like maybe her writing to some people is good. That's fine if you feel that way. I don't. So I'm not going to do this to myself or to Alexandra Bracken's books anymore. We're not meant to be.
Yeah, I read Passenger as well. Don't remember it at all. It left like, and I feel like this is the same with this book. Like,
I don't remember what happened.
Yeah, it's like they're fine to read. Like, if you need something to read, need to pass the time. Like,
you're on a desert island and her books are there.
I still would not recommend.
But like, they're not memorable in any way. Like, the one good thing I have to say about it is that nothing was slow minus like the flashbacks. Like there was always shit happening, and that was like the one good thing. And I feel like that was the same with Passenger, and I think that was a thing for me too.
Yeah. I've read The Darkest Minds by her, and I read that pre-booktube, so I don't remember really how I felt about that. And then I read Passenger and Wayfarer, which I struggled with immensely. I thought that they were very slow. Her writing is like very heavy and very dense for YA, in my opinion. And so like this was like the last straw for me and her. And I do think that the writing was more fast-paced than her other books, but like I still did not enjoy it.
Yeah. I've only read somebody just said it and it left my brain, The Darkest Minds. And I think I enjoyed it at the time. So it was like a 3 or 4 star read. I can't remember. And I also don't remember anything that happened in that book. I never continued on with the series and I never read Passenger. So I was just kind of like, oh, I like that. And then went from my brain.
There's something about her writing that, like, even though, you know, you guys are saying that it's fast paced and like, it's weird because like stuff happens, but I feel like I'm stuck in molasses. Like just like, like it's supposed to feel fast paced because I'm comparing this sort of to another author whose books I always forget, Marissa Meyer. I actually like Marissa Meyer's books when I'm reading them, and then I forget about them. But they're like fine to read when I'm reading them. This doesn't feel the same way. Like this is like I still get stuck, but like stuff is happening, but I'm like I do not care about anything that's happening.
That's exactly how I felt about Passenger.
Yeah,
but I don't know what
I felt about it.
Like I can't pinpoint what it is about her writing. Maybe Maddie can because she's one of the analyzers. Like I don't know what it is that she's doing that's making me feel that way, craft-wise. So
I finished this a hot second ago, so it's still like going on through my brain. But I agree that while stuff was constantly happening, it didn't feel fast-paced to me at all. It actually I was dreading reading it. It was so boring. And I think part of what it is to me is that the things that were happening were super repetitive. Like it wasn't like new things were happening. It was constantly like they go here. Somebody tries to kill Lore. Lore blacks out. Lore comes to because she got healed. Okay, let's go to the next plan. They go here. Somebody tries to kill Lore. And this happened like 4 or 5 times, like back to back. So I'm like, okay, it's happening again, but I already saw this and I don't care. So like, I feel like she was trying to trick me into thinking a lot was happening, but it was just the same one thing happening over and over again. That's kind of how I felt.
And I feel like part of it is too because she decided to have it within like 1 week span in one city. There's only so much you can do with like the concept that she set up with there's these people trying to kill them and you're with the person all the time. So of course the same thing is going to keep happening. And I feel like the characters, like when we're introduced to Lore and everybody and like things start happening, I didn't feel like I knew the characters well enough to actually care if anybody got hurt and they kept getting hurt and like getting saved and like getting healed. And I was like, there's no stakes in this story whatsoever. Yeah.
And you would think that there would be because it's like God's on this whole like big game to kill each other. And so like the stakes should be there, but it never felt, I think because I wasn't invested in any of the characters, like Lore could have died and I would have been like, sad. I just didn't care at all about her.
Yeah. I think part of that might be, and we're going to get to the plot, but the fact that like the setup for why this is all happening was shaky as well. Like the fact that it was like Zeus was mad at the gods for reasons, and so then we do this thing for reasons, and it's just like, okay, like there's absolutely no, like in the comparison to like people are saying this is the Hunger Games with Greek mythology. At least with the Hunger Games, they set up like what the world looks like and why this happened and why it was a punishment according to the Capitol and blah, 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 blah. We don't have any of that here. We're just kind of like, why would Zeus do this at all? Don't even get me started. We're going to go on a rant about this, or at least I am. The fact that Zeus is presented as like the neutral good guy who did the good thing to punish the gods, fuck that entirely. I refuse to go along with that narrative. You're going to have the everyone agrees, douchiest god in Greek pantheon. Sorry, Sky Daddy. And you're going to just make him neutral good and like this background? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So yeah, just the fact that it was already on shaky ground to start with, I think was part of the reason that I was like, why am I supposed to care about this when I don't even know why it's happening?
Right. I felt very dumb reading this book at some point, especially when they were trying to figure out the poem. I was like, is there something I'm supposed to be getting here? Because I don't understand any of this. And I'm just like reading to see like, how is it going to end? I was like, basically at the end, I was like flipping through all of the like fighting and stuff because I'm like, I'm not going to understand what she's trying to tell me here. I don't remember the poem by this point in the book that she's like referencing 2 lines to. Like,
I forgot that the poem was even at the beginning of the book. I'm like, oh, that's right, there was a poem.
Yeah, there was a poem at the very beginning. So what we're saying?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So this, in a lot of ways, the reading experience kind of reminded me of Legendborn because I felt in that one too, like I am not understanding a lot of this mythology. Like I didn't like they kept saying relationships between people, and I was like, ooh, what? But in Legendborn, I cared so much about the characters, and then she just kept repeating things to us in like very natural, graceful ways that by the end I was like, I've got the bones of what the world is and who everybody is to each other. I still have no freaking idea, like what the setup is, who kills who for powers, what the families
are set up.
Yeah,
no idea.
Did not get it.
Yeah,
and I almost want to be like somebody who gave it like 4 or 5 stars. Like, explain it to me. Like, did you get it? Because it truly made me feel stupid, and I did not enjoy that experience.
Yeah. The way that everything was set up, like with I think it was like. This is going to be mean, but it felt like Alexandra Bracken read a Wikipedia page about Greek mythology and was like, fun, and like put it together in a way that made no sense. Because again, even like the hunter societies, and I guess they're all supposed to be in one family, but even that wasn't very clear if they're all like one family. I don't really think they are from what they were saying about like Tidebringer, but anyway. So like the fact that she just threw together some heroes and was like, yeah, so the hunters would obviously be these heroes that the gods used before, so that doesn't even make sense. Like, so did it start with those heroes being in charge? We don't know. And just was like, these all, I read about these. They all make sense, and that was it. Because there was no, it didn't feel like this was written by somebody. I'm sure she did research. I'm not trying to shade and be like she read Wikipedia. I'm going to pretend that she did research. However, it didn't feel like she did. Like, it didn't feel like she had any knowledge of Greek mythology, and not that every Greek mythology story has to be completely accurate to that, and you can do retellings and stuff, but it didn't even seem like she had the basis to go off of to do that, which was why it just felt like soup that we had.
I'm not familiar enough with Greek mythology. Like, I used to love Greek mythology in 5th grade. Like, that's that is my basis. But I also wasn't, to compare it to her last book, I wasn't I'm not super familiar with like Arthurian legends, but I still loved that book. Here, it just, to me, I don't know, I can't comment on how much she knows about Greek mythology, but I told Jess also read this, and she was like, I didn't like it. I was like, I didn't either. But I told her it felt like it was going into it, and I didn't do the required reading before class. Like, I was sitting there like pretending I knew what was happening, but I was missing a chunk of something.
Like, she almost assumed that the reader already knew these things, and that they could just go off of their own already knowledge, like the knowledge they already had.
Yes,
but not everybody, like, I don't know.
It didn't even, but as somebody who does know things, it didn't even feel like that, because I was like, do you know what you're talking about? Like I think even some of the characterizations of like the gods, I mean, she didn't throw really in any god powers besides what maybe like a 5th grader would know. Like, Poseidon would have water powers.
Yeah.
Apollo has healing, and it's like, cool. Can we do something like more than that? So the fact that it was just, she even just threw in the most basic thing, it's like, I don't know. I just felt like it was super lazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I read like 100 pages of this book after I drank a whole bottle of wine, and I didn't impede. I didn't miss anything. I picked it up, and I'm like, I know exactly what I knew before, which is nothing. So
I would, like I said, I was cleaning my whole apartment. Usually when I'm listening to audiobooks, I do like to do something else, but I'll get distracted and I'll sit down and like listen for a while. That didn't happen here. I just needed to be busy with other things. But at one point I was scrubbing my tub, and I was scared. And I was scared my AirPods were going to fall out and land in the tub. So I took my AirPods out and I put them down, and I kept scrubbing. And when I was done, I realized that it didn't automatically pause. It just kept playing. So I just put the AirPods back in and kept listening. I was like, I'm fine. I know it's fine.
Yep.
And I feel like it's because also too, there's so many, like, I don't really like reading fight scenes. It's just not my shit. Like, I need some emotional attachment to what's happening. There needs to be some reason for this fight to keep happening. But with every fight scene, it was just like descriptions of the weapons that are being used, who's being killed, very descriptive about like the kinds of like injuries and shit that was going down. But like, I could easily just skim past those and just catch up when I see like, oh, like Castor's back. Okay, let's read what's happening here, because it'll be an emotional moment that I'll like be tuned into. So like, that was my problem as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So I feel bad. I was just like shitting on this for an hour. It just really wasn't enjoyable for me. We've been talking a little bit about like the plot soupiness of it all. So let's back up here and talk about Lore, who is the main character. How did you guys? We've kind of addressed like the lack of attachment, but how did you feel overall about Lore and just sort of like her characterization and function in the story?
Yeah, just a big shrug on her. I feel like I never really understood her motivations. Like her family died, somebody killed them, she wants revenge, and it was just like the whole arc. I realized at the end is supposed to be her realizing like revenge isn't worth it, like getting a hold of her anger and her impulsiveness, and I'm like, but what was the point when I read that?
Was that the arc?
That was her like personal like character arc.
Didn't see it.
Like the tunnel where she's like, you know what? I'm not gonna let my anger get to me this time. This was what you're trying to build up to, really?
Yeah.
See,
I can see that.
Not worth the payoff of that book. No.
Intellectually, I understand that arc. And were a friend to come to me, I would also be like, yeah, sure, let go of your anger. But there were so many, my sense of justice, okay? How are you going to put like rape and murder and like pedophiles all over this, and then the lesson be, don't be that angry. Get over it. Revenge is not... especially in a story that's supposed to be epic, it's mythology, and then for her to just come to this realization of like, I should have let my anger go. Really? Like, I think maybe you should have done more.
That would have been a more interesting story to like see her come into the power and like fuck everybody up. I would have been there for like a revenge plot, but that's not what we were given. So
yeah, I felt very blah about it. Also, and this is a complete different, this is not important, but why not? The fact that we found out that her name is Melora and they call her Lore instead of Mel.
Yeah.
I don't buy that. You wanted a cool name for your character in your book. That's why you did that. That's not what people would call her at all for a nickname. I know that's petty, but that's how I feel. But like,
on it is.
Yeah, I was like, oh, Melora, whatever. But yeah, she had the bones to be a character that I would like, because I do like my stubborn, impulsive protagonists that do dumb shit. But she did it, but like there's a line, because either I'm gonna love or hate that. And when she was doing stuff, I'm like, you're being stupid. Like I'm forgetting the plot point already, but like there's a time when you can blatantly tell that Athena's trying to like get her to do something that's gonna get her in trouble. And she's like, yeah, I don't trust you, Castor. And I was like, what? Yeah. Like that makes no sense. So, and the constantly shifting motivations sort of characters in here made no sense. Like just at the rate at which people's moods changed and even like their relationships changed. No.
Especially because it takes place over like a week.
4 days. Yeah. A week, but it takes place in like 4 days.
In the book where it was like, we still have 4 more days left of this week to like fight and kill everybody. And I'm like, it's only been 3 days.
The whole Melora Lore thing reminds me of Xander from Buffy. His name is Alexander, and everybody calls him Xander instead of Alex.
Yep.
Anyway, I agree about like one of the things, the bones were there. I didn't like hate her while I was reading it. And there were moments where I was like, okay, yeah, she's got some spark to her. But the thing that really pushed me over the edge was anything to do with Athena, because I thought it was so obvious. And the whole book showed, like, for what it's worth, like, tries to show us that gods are not to be trusted. How many times do they say, don't trust gods and all this stuff? And then Athena's like, but you can trust me. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, I don't know. I just felt that was like the one big twist that was coming, and I saw it all along. So it kind of took even more enjoyment out of the story.
I did not see that twist coming. I was like, this is the twist.
Yeah, I was the same way. I didn't care enough.
I wasn't paying attention.
Like,
I was not actively reading. I was just, my eyes were skimming words. Words were happening. And I was just like, okay, I've passed 50 pages. We're almost closer to the end. So when it was like, Athena is the bad guy, I was like, huh.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
Okay.
It was nice. I was like, something's wrong here. Like, the motivations aren't right. Like, something's going to be, like, revealed. And when it was revealed, I was like, oh, okay. Now I know the answer to, like, what my brain was thinking about. Cool. Like, I was not invested at all. which is like bad for like the main twist of your book that people are just like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I guess I felt like, oh, this is going to be something, because for a book about Greek gods, there were like 2 of them in this whole thing. And I was like, obviously she's bad. Obviously she's bad. I don't know. Just, it wasn't entertaining.
Mhm.
Okay. Apart from lore, our like main male love interest, I guess, is Castor, Apollo, new Apollo, whatever the deal was there. Still not
Master
entirely
Apollo.
still not entirely sure. How did you feel about that character?
He was better of like the 2 being like the 2 sort of mains. He was better. Like I think again, he had the bones for me to like him, where it's like, oh, we had this character that like couldn't fight and he was sick, and we had this whole like cancer narrative, which I was like, part of me was like, and so of course when he comes back as like the god of like healing, I was like, of course he does. But yeah, I still was just like, no. Like and even their dynamic, I was like, at the beginning I was a little bit more like maybe, but we just didn't get enough time with it, and they tried with those like flashback scenes. But again, the fact that they were like 12 when we had the flashbacks, and then they didn't see each other for 7 years and are like really very different people, and then all of a sudden we're supposed to be like, but they love each other. I don't know, just don't. Yeah, couldn't really follow that a ton. I wanted to like it at the beginning when I was going to give this book a chance. Once we got farther in, I was like, oh, I'm just going to hate this. I stopped trying to get invested. So
I wasn't invested, but anytime they were like together, I was like, all right, this is better than fighting. Like, give us a little smooch, spice this up. Like,
Do we ever find out what is with his character? I didn't get to that part of the book.
Basically Apollo like self-sacrifices. He's like, I'm done with everything, so he like holds the weapon with him as a kid and like kills himself so that he ascends or whatever. I knew like from the moment he was like, I don't remember, I'm like, it was willingly done, because that's why you have all this fucking power. Like the only bit is making sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
He was okay. Like I was like Maddie, I was like, let's get the romance part, because at least I'll enjoy this scene, and like otherwise I didn't really care. Plus I felt like his motivations were weird, because like he has all of like his family to take care of that has remained, and he's like very gung-ho about like taking care of them in the beginning, and then forgets about them completely and is just following more the rest of the book. I'm like, what about the 27 people who lived? What are they doing? Are they okay?
Why did you mention them? And like give them a number, quantify them for us, and
just
then be like,
just kill them
anyway.
Oh my god, it was so.
Yeah,
they threw him the whole party at the beginning of the book, and then he just left them.
Yeah,
I was like, thanks for the party, bye guys.
Yeah, no, he was fine. It was fine, but the like relationship stuff was the only stuff that I was like, okay, let's see if this goes somewhere. But yeah, I will immediately forget about them after the end of this live.
I was reading their like kiss scene, and I was like, me, a person who like loves the romance stuff, I was like, no care.
There's like one scene too where he's like, I was born knowing how to do 3 things, and I can't remember what the 3 things are, but the third one was being in love with lore, and I was like, normally that shit I would eat it up. I love a good one-liner, and I was like, this is cheesy. I'm not invested.
That is something that I would just like die for, but in this instance, I'm like, ew.
Yeah, it literally got the ick.
Yes.
And that's how you know you're not invested in your characters. Any other characters that stood out to you at all?
We have to rant about Wrath and just how bad of a fucking villain that was. I was like appalled for how bad.
My thing was like, of course you're going to make Ares the bad guy. Like, it didn't seem even original either. It was like, of course you're going to make the god of war.
Right. If you don't have Hades, which is a bad choice to make a bad guy anyway, then you're going to pick Ares.
You're going to pick Ares. So like, this is equally as bad as this is.
Yeah. But the fact that she just kept beating us over the head with, he's a pedophile racist or rapist, was probably racist too. Like I'm surprised she didn't put that in there as well. It's like, what are all the bad traits of a person? We're going to put it in this character. Like, he did not make any sense besides just being like a trope. And the fact that all of the like male characters that show up as like male adults in power were that, I'm like, okay, I get it that we currently have QAnon rings of like child rapists running around, according to like, crazies. But like do we have to do this in this book? Is this what we need to do? Like, are you that bad? Are you that bad at writing? That this is what we're gonna do for your villain? It's bad.
That's kind of my thing is that, like, okay, if this were supposed to be like, at first when we were talking about this, we're like, oh, maybe it'll be like a Cersei thing where it's like a more like feministy take on like some sort of Greek mythology. And if she really wanted this to be like, you know, about this female warrior that is like understanding her power, avenging her family, none of that happens. And so, but anyways, if that's what you wanted to be, and then you made all of your like powerful men like rapists and murderers to like say something there, but you didn't say anything. It was just like shorthand for how do I get the audience to know that these people are evil? I know, rapists and pedophiles, and then just left it there. Yeah, and then she just left it there and never said anything, never commented. There wasn't any like thematic content. We never see anything else other than those brief mentions of, remember, he likes children, and then it was like, oh, and like, what else? Like, what are you trying to do here other than elicit like a cheap response so that we know in a few words that this is the bad guy? It just felt like empty to me.
You could tell she was trying to make it like a feminist story as well, with like all the little elements of it, like Tidebringer, which arguably would have been a more interesting story to read about, like a woman who like seizes power and then her whole family is killed as a result. Like,
and they shun her.
And then she's there for like 3 seconds in the book, and I'm like, I'm annoyed because like these are the elements you want us to be thinking about, but then you're just glossing over everything in favor of being like, Lore wants the power, but she's not allowed because she's a woman. And like that's all we get really from the entire book.
And I think the like most like feministy sort of commentary, or like the way that she's trying to at least reframe some pieces of the Greek mythology, is through Athena, where she's like, okay, what you know is not true. Here's like how it really happened. But then Athena ends up being evil, and I'm like, wait, so you're just taking back everything you said. Why?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And just even like with Wrath, and I mentioned this when I was ranting about it after I read it on Instagram, but like yes, men that are despicable rise to power all the time. We know that. However, they're at least charismatic, or something makes them fool people, right? Yep. But the fact that it was so like ham-fisted of like all he does ever in front of anyone is be a rapist, murdering pedophile. So it's like, how do these men get to power? Like, I get the people in power can do these things. However, they hide it. Like they make themselves more appealing to the masses. So just even the way that the Hunter Society was set up to have all these people in power, I was like, this doesn't really make sense. And again, the fact that we don't see anything else within the society besides some of these leaders. And like the whole time I was like, where are the adults? Like besides the gods, I was like, so Vander is like the main tech dude, and there's not like an actual, I don't know, like engineer that they have like, somewhere. Like, where are any of the adults? And they just weren't there conveniently.
And these are the things that like you could probably forgive in another story. And I kept having this feeling too of like nitpicking like small things like that, but it was because I was so bored by everything. Like there was no reason for me to give it grace or to like overlook any of these things, because I didn't care about the characters. I was confused by the world building. The plot was all over the place. I was like, yeah, and this little thing sucks too.
Yeah, I feel like the only character that like I marginally cared about was Van. I don't know, like soft spot. Like the one character I was like, I can tolerate you because you're being snarky toward everybody. Miles was okay, but mostly Van. I was like, I want him to like get soft and be with Miles. That's all I care about.
Yes, that was the only relationship. Right? Yes, that was the only relationship that made any kind of like sense. And the dynamics that I was like, oh, But yeah, otherwise didn't care. One last thing about Wrath, real quick. Did anyone notice that at the end when he killed his son, who was like mentioned just for like sort of plot fodder, that he licked the blood off his fingers? Why?
Yeah.
Why though?
Just cause. He's spicy.
Right. like again, another example. Right, he's evil, so he licks the blood of his bastard son off of his hands.
But there's water. They're in a flooded tunnel. He could have just washed his hands out.
It literally makes no sense. Okay, sorry. Anyway, let's go. Sorry. It was so stupid.
I'm trying to think if there are other characters. No.
What about Jill or Hermes? Yeah, see, even the fact that like that was a thing, and the fact that she was like, he just tried to trick me, and I was like, bitch, he obviously was like trying to protect you, dumbass. Yeah. Like, come on.
He left you the house. Like,
Yeah,
gave you money.
We live like brownstone in New York, like.
Yeah.
I just, there were so many things that she like said and did and thought that I was like, why are you being this way?
And then there's also like Iroh, who like betrays Laura at one point and then is back the next point to be good again. I was like, what was the...
2 chapters later, she kills Castor, thinking that he's gonna die, not knowing that he's actually immortal. And then they're all like, okay, cool. Nice to see you.
Right?
What?
Okay, I love a good found family story. I love it. It is like my shit. But the fact that she gets to this point where she's like looking at the girl who betrayed her and almost killed her man who's her man even though they didn't see each other for 7 years. The one guy that they have one scene, Van, like she hated him and then they were like, we cool, and now they're like, and then at the end she's like, my family. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
None of this feels earned. I hate it.
Yeah. There was even some I know I'm picking out everything because I didn't like it. There was even some like little hints where I think she was trying to get us to realize that like Lore loved New York City, like New York City was her heart. And like those characters are really annoying. Anyone that's like, oh, New York City, meh, I'm like, stop it. But anyway, I would have been fine with it in this case if she actually did it well, but she didn't. And so she has this whole thing at the end where like she becomes Athena to like save New York. And I'm like, excuse me, like you love New York that much? Because I don't really get that sense. And we also didn't, I personally, besides some mentions of some landmarks in New York, this could have taken place in any major city and I wouldn't have known where we were. So don't try to make New York this like thing that Lore loves if you're not even gonna like make New York be almost like another character in the book.
I was very confused why there was a map. I'm like, why did we need this?
We didn't need the map because
like this is a nice map, but why did we need this?
Because good books have maps. Good books have maps.
Yeah,
bitches love maps.
Yeah, the New York stuff was heavy-handed to say the least, because there were mentions of her like being like, the city, I love it, and I was just like,
oh, we're like how
why?
Like the whole bagel comment. Real New Yorkers don't.
The bagel comment. Oh my god.
That was the one thing that annoyed me the most about the book was any New York comment, because like looking at like Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, where we spend most of the time in New York, but it's so like it's a character but it's in the background of everything, versus this where it's just like a one-liner being like, I really love New York City.
Right. It was never like description, like showing you the sights and the sounds of New York and how comfortable she feels there. It was literally lines that were like, I love New York. And
like the people in New York are the best people, but even they like there was like weird lines like that, and I'm like, okay, we get it. The author really likes New York and wanted this book there.
and just stuff like, I don't know, like, oh, I could have moved, but I like it here. Good. It's just so weird. What else? I don't really know. The end. How did you guys feel about the
year? What happened in the end?
Good question.
What happened in the end?
I got to like the last part where it was like part 5, and I was like, no, I don't care.
Yeah, what did happen? Athena teamed up with Wrath, sort of, because she wants the Aegis. Is that what
I don't know how to pronounce any of the things.
Yeah, she wants the shield. I guess for reasons. And
because her daddy made it.
Yeah, it's because
she's got daddy issues. The feminist Greek mythology retelling gave our main villain daddy issues.
Yep.
She just wanted daddy to love her. That was the whole plot.
Yeah. So we have that, and then they were going to use some kind of Roman thing to blow up the city out of nowhere. We didn't mention Romans at all, and then all of a sudden,
like the green fire from Game of Thrones,
kind of like green fire. We're gonna do that, and then that happens, and then Athena does the same thing that Apollo did for Castor, where she sacrifices herself for Lore, which makes no sense for a character arc. Yeah. So she gets to ascend after all the shit she's done, and that's allowed to happen. And Lore takes on the power that she never wanted because of the city, and to save the city and her friends. So she does that, and then the city's gonna flood, I think. So she's like pounding the ground. We get that
because the
idea?
fire. I think this is where I started skimming. Not gonna lie.
So did I.
The fire came out, so she was trying to make sure I didn't go above ground or something. So she digs into the ground with her fist.
Yeah.
And then the water goes underneath somewhere. I don't think that's how it works, but
It's like stifling the
Yes.
We're like
Yeah.
cleave the earth so the water will go in the earth.
I'm like, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure things would cave in from
Sounds
above if
fine.
you did that, but sure.
Like,
It's
that's not how
magic fire, but also if magic fire doesn't have oxygen, it goes out. So
yeah.
she's like stifling.
Yes. And then Castor saves her and heals her as per what he does. And then I think they sort of like pray to Zeus to take their powers away, and they become human and live together like humans.
Yeah.
I did not want to spend one more second in this book. I will tell you that. But when it was resolved in 5 seconds, and it was just like, I wish I could be human. And she's like, thank you. I was like, I was so upset. I didn't want anything more.
No.
But also, shame on you for not giving me anything more. How was that an ending?
Yeah, it was just like she just couldn't leave it. Like I would have preferred like Laura having to deal with the fact like no, she's a fucking god and like that's it. Like leave it open ended like that. But she was like, it's a standalone. It has to end happily with like the bows wrapped up. And I'm like, it made everything just. It made me so annoyed. Like I read this entire thing and now we're just back at the beginning except she has no powers.
Yeah.
What
was the point? We don't know.
What was the point? What was the point?
Yeah.
Anybody?
So
there were some people in the chat that
Athena got
liked
to ascend to what? What did she ascend to?
Athena, so basically, like you get to get out of the Aegon, I guess, and just like die, but not die, because the few times that Laura sort of like died, she saw like figures. So those were the gods that had actually been killed, and Athena and Apollo were like missing because they got to like be free.
So the whole point of the book was that they got to ascend. That's like the only thing that changes between the beginning of the book and the end of the book is that they get to ascend.
I guess kinda.
I mean, are the games gonna keep happening?
There's no gods left now that they're not.
Yeah,
so they don't have power.
All the other gods were dead. Yeah, so this was officially like the end. The only way to get out. Yeah.
It was just dumb. I'm sorry. Like the more we talk about this, the less like I feel like I was like okay with the book, and I'm like, no, it was a 2. It wasn't. Yeah.
Okay. So I know, and you know, I don't want. I feel bad because I know that there are a lot of people who like this, and there are people in the chat who like this. So I don't want it to come across as like bashing on this thing, but I really, really didn't enjoy it. But I will say the reason that it isn't like a 1-star read to me is that like Alexandra Bracken like put sentences together. She chose correct words to go in said sentences.
The bar is low.
No, we are not putting the bar that low.
We are, because 1-star books for me are like Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, where she did not put sentences together correctly. Okay, Sarah J. Maas doesn't know how to construct a sentence. Alexandra Bracken put some sentences together, and there was some characterization there. There was like building blocks there that I was like, potential. So it's not quite 1 star. It's like 1.5 star. That's my reasoning.
It had like all the elements you need for a story. It just wasn't satisfying.
Guys, the fact that we're sitting here like she could put together a sentence, therefore I can't give her 1 star. Like
yes.
The bar is on the floor. This is like the
correct.
Of, oh my god, the guy that I'm dating has toilet paper at his house.
This is the same energy. It is
no. 1 star for me is the floor. That is in my personal rating. 1 star is the floor.
That's fine. Yeah. Love yourself more.
Like, I would have DNF'd this. I would have given it nothing had it not been for this live show.
That's valid.
I would not have finished.
Yeah, I would.
I did DNF it.
Yeah, Jordan, bless you. Because I would have. So someone earlier in the chat said, "Is there anything?" I know that we're not supposed to beat this in the ground, but I don't care, and I will. Is there any reason to pick this up?
If you like Greek mythology, just for shits and gigs.
No, I disagree.
No, do it for what you can tell me. It's that part. if you're a scholar in it, please
Right.
tell me what she did.
I would love to hear Connor's opinion of this.
Yes,
Okay,
Connor needs to read it.
I'm
regardless
so
of our-
thankful that Connor's not here because he would have suffered. I don't want Connor to suffer.
But he didn't finish it.
I know, but
maybe we could have understood more.
Yeah, like he would have given us backstories like, oh, this hero did this thing, or like this god is
like,
known.
why
We would have had
did
another
he
half
have
an
a
hour
twin?
of just like Greek mythology, which is great. I love that. But he would have just been in pain, and I don't want that for Connor.
I was I was certain that the twist was going to be that Castor was like not himself, like he had died and it was a twin in his place.
That would have been too good for this
Because-
story.
Well, because Castor is a twin. Where was Pollock?
Oh,
The
you
whole
are
book.
smart,
I was like,
Jordan.
where is
You,
Pollock?
I didn't even think about that.
So I'm sad that was the twist. Was that yeah.
And that would have been a little bit more interesting. Yeah.
Because
That
he
would
didn't
have
have
been
memory. He didn't have memories of how he became who he was. And so I thought maybe something had happened where the original Castor died and this new guy was his twin. And I'm sad that didn't happen.
Yeah, that would have been more interesting.
So,
But
Kate in the chat says, I hated the book, but I gave it 3 stars because I thought it would be good read for young teens, but not me at 29 years old.
maybe.
I feel like based on the books that I used to read as a kid, this would have fit perfectly in with like that early YA shit.
It did definitely feel like 2012
Yeah.
YA. You know, like this would have got. I would have had more leeway maybe in those days for me.
Yeah. Like when I read Percy Jackson, this would have been a great thing to read at like that same time. Because I was already so invested.
If you're
MySpace.
and you're like you're getting past it. Yeah, I guess like when I've been talking about this with people, because I know a lot of people do like it, and I'm not trying to say anything about you and your taste if you like it. This is not what I'm talking about. But like I think a lot of people like there are plenty of people that do like it, so try. But if you read like the first 50 pages and you're like, you're probably not gonna like it.
Nothing changes after the first 50 pages. So if you read it and you're feeling yourself like it's a slog, honestly, the first 50 pages is probably the best of what you're gonna get,
she's
and
like
it
fighting
goes
and stuff. It was actually decent. Like I had hope when she's like in the. I knew like it was kind of teetering on cheesy the way she's like in the fighting ring. This is how she makes her money. But I was like, could be interesting. And then as soon as all the god stuff was introduced, I'm like, no.
I forgot about the fighting ring.
I did too. I was like, oh my god,
why did we do that?
I forgot about that.
So the reason I'm making faces about like the whole like YA thing, I agree. Like, you know, as adult readers of YA, there's always that like thing of like, okay, this isn't necessarily for me. However, I read plenty of YA that I think is good. And I just, apart from this like being not for me, I just didn't think that this was like a particularly well constructed story. I thought it was like boring. Like there were a lot of things that weren't just like, hey, this isn't for me. In addition to, I don't think this story was for me. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know why this would be better for teens than for adults. Like none of the thematic content was like better suited for teens than for adults. I just don't think that this was a good book, period. So
yeah, this is one of the few books that since I didn't like it, I sort of do want to know like why other people did. Like one of the few times that I didn't like something, and I don't have enough. Like, yes, sure, I'm like nitpicking about it, but I will forget this like in 2 weeks. Like, it's not going to stick with me the way like the Bronze Horseman has stuck with me and traumatized me for my entire life from reading it. So like, I don't really feel any kind of sensitivity if I go and see people loved it, but I like genuinely don't know, and I'm not being a bitch about this. Like, I genuinely don't know how people could like give it 4 and 5. Like, I just don't see it. So that's why I'm kind of thinking I might go to Goodreads and be like, what did y'all like about this? Because I am just very curious, you know, how it worked so well for other people and like not for us.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of where I am too, because it is super highly rated. Like when I checked right after I finished, everybody that I saw that I was friends with, like connected to, I think the lowest I saw was Sam, who gave it 1. One person gave it 3, and everybody else that I was connected to that had read this gave it 4 or 5 stars. So it was like very shocking, especially because I didn't have time to like investigate because I had to jump on here. I just finished it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I missed something here clearly, and I'm not entirely sure what that thing is. So to tell people like, okay, you might like this if, I don't know. Like I haven't processed that yet, like who might enjoy this story.
And
that's how I feel about.
Go ahead, Jordan.
That's how I feel about all of Alexandra Bracken's books. I've always, because a lot of them get rated very highly and are very well loved on like in the book community. And I don't understand for any of them, like what it is that's drawing you in, what it is that's giving it a high rating. So like maybe if you like her other books, you would like this, because I felt like I did not like her other books, so I did not like this. So maybe like if you're already her fan, then
I feel like her writing was like weird too for this one, because I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be YA or adult just because of the way they were describing like the deaths and stuff, like the eyes are gouged out of kids. That stuff was very graphic for
child
YA.
mutilation was a lot.
I was like, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be adult, but like not spicy. Like I was like very confused by her writing style. Like, is she trying to lean more this way, but it's not really working because her voice still feels very YA to me. And I think that was part of the reason it didn't work.
Lore.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, so this is I don't even think this, thinking about it, I don't know what it shelved at, but it doesn't feel like YA. Again, none of the thematic content feels like YA. The protagonist is not necessarily in that age bracket. Like, I don't understand why you would consider this YA anyways.
Just because she's seriously written.
Because I like don't know how it was been marketed. Because her name is attached to YA, I wasn't sure if this was her breakout into adult. And I feel like that sort of stuff has been confused. They've probably positioned it as a crossover, but it doesn't feel like it's warranted to be a crossover either.
I don't even know where to put it. Like, this doesn't even feel even like new adult either. There's because we can't identify what the themes are supposed to be. It's like, where does this go? But yeah, I do kind of wonder if she wants to kind of cross over, because all of her writing friends are basically like crossover authors now a little bit. But yeah, someone mentioned that like a bunch of the book boxes chose this for their book. And I think the reason for that is because, you know, behind the scenes, the book boxes get sort of like pitched books, and Alexandra Bracken has like a ton of backing behind her. Like the publisher, she makes the publisher a ton of money, even if we don't agree that this is a good book. So that's why the book boxes did it, because it's not like the book boxes aren't choosing things out of the kindness of their heart, guys. Like, they get like pitched things, just so you all know. So like that's why is because she's like, and yeah, this book is gonna make a ton of money. She's a well-known author. The Darkest Minds was like one of the bigger dystopians that came out. Like, her name makes money. So and
the premise like was enough that even though we didn't even like her previous books, we were like, oh, that sounds like a cool premise. Like, there was enough there that we don't pick books to hate them in this book club. We're always trying to find books that like all of us agree like are things that we would be willing to read. And this one we were like, okay, Greek mythology, maybe like a little feminist take. Like, it was a good enough hook that it got all of us. I don't think it was well executed.
Yeah, this was definitely going to be on my like most disappointing books from the year, because I did have this on my like most anticipated. Like, even though I haven't liked Alexandra Bracken, I was going in being like, this could be the Addie LaRue of Alexandra Bracken for me. You know, so I do think, again, this is the universe being like, you're getting cocky. Don't think that we're going to just be nice to you, you know, because I really was like, okay, we started with Legendborn. We just had Addie a couple months ago. Like, it couldn't, no.
Yeah, unfortunately not. A few people have mentioned Percy Jackson in the comments, and how this, like, if this gave you nostalgia for those books and how it like stacks up.
I love Percy Jackson so dearly, and I would not even, I didn't even cross my mind, because it was so not even similar. Like, the two are not anything alike that I wasn't even like, oh, Percy Jackson, I miss you. Because it was so different.
Yes. Yeah. I read the first one as an adult, and I was like, that's fine.
They're all, I love Percy Jackson. So
yeah, it definitely didn't have, like, as far as a crossover book from that, even Percy Jackson, as much as it's not for me, because I started reading them as an adult. I tried to, and then I was like, this is for middle grade more. But it has that humor, and like there's some sense of like lightness to that even this didn't have. Like, that's also a piece that was sort of missing, the sense of hope that you get from like something like The Hunger Games, something like Percy Jackson. It just wasn't there. It was like, what are we even pulling for here? Like,
well, the gods are so much more like they're characterized better in Percy Jackson too. They have like very fleshed out personalities, very fleshed out like differences between them. It's not just like, oh, you're a bad guy and you want to marry children. Like, they all have like very specific personalities, which this one I didn't feel did at all.
No. Yeah. Anything else? Any final thoughts on this book? I was gonna say something and it completely left me. This is a standalone. I'm not.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
That's awful. Not that I would have read book 2, but the way that it ended, for it to just that be the ending, awful.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts on lore?
I think we've beat the dead horse of hating
Yeah.
it.
Honestly
Right.
impressed that we made 50 minutes worth of content from.
Yes.
I told you I had a lot to rant about. I kept pulling out, like, remember this shitty thing? Remember
Okay.
this fun thing?
Here's what I was gonna say. I know, Sam, you said that you're gonna forget this in a week or two, and I
Uh-huh.
feel like a lot of the like details will be lost to me as well. But I'm gonna try and like hold the hate because in February of 2021, I can already tell this will be like top 10 worst books of the year.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I maintain that like fresh. So when
Yeah.
it comes to December, I'll be like, lore. Yep.
That's it. That's it.
We pull all those feelings back out.
Uh-huh.
Just
Yeah.
rewatch this. Don't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Amazing. I saw somebody earlier in the chat asking too, like about our future picks for the book club. So we always announce our next pick, like at the end of the live show. So we're only doing 1 month ahead. And to that end, we are going to be reading, oh my God, the name just escaped me, The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune in March. So, it's a booktube darling. Connor loves this book and he is willing to reread it with us. So I'm hopeful that we will have a nice upswing in March and we will all read a book that we love. So
I have high expectations. I feel like I haven't seen anything bad about this one. So I feel like even if it's not for me, I'm expecting it to at least be well written enough that
Yes, and it's also by an author that has only recently become a booktube author darling instead of Alexandra Bracken, who's been like
around forever.
yes, hyped. So I think I'm also hopeful. Don't just stop, universe, be 9. But like I think it might be okay.
Yeah. We deserve it. If the universe is listening, we deserve it.
Manifest it. We are all going to enjoy. I'm so happy we all enjoyed the Cerulean Sea.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
All right. So that will be next month's live show. We do these on the last Saturday of the month, typically, but you'll find all of the information about our next live show over on our Twitter or on our Instagram. So you can check those out for more information. Thank you guys so much for joining, for keeping us company in the chat. Apologies to anybody who liked this. I'm so sorry. But thank you for listening to us get all of our feelings out. And we will see you again next month.
Yeah.
Bye.